Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Once upon a midnight video, well upon it, weekend. Ja, funktioniert. So, welcome back everyone. Grab some water or coffee. And then we're gonna start again and a real You can ring my bell, ring my bell, ring a ding a ding. Yeah. Microphone check. Don't want to kill here anything. So, please come back to your seats so we can start our second pitching group for today.
It's not going to tell you who it is.
Oh. Maybe it's in France, I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe. That gives it away. Here we go. I did the Sherlock kind of thing, so we... Pure deduction. Okay, please everyone, come to your seats so we can announce the first project of the second pitching group. Pitching group. All right. So the next project is presented by Shifts, and the name of the group of the artists around David Brandstetter and Malvin Gerb, founded in 2007, is indicative. This is the word. Indicative. Indicative. Yes, it's indicative of their way of working. Behind the founding of Shifts is the conviction that a constant change of perspective, a shifting of balance, and adjusting external parameters are conditions for any serious and lasting engagement with the art to which they are committed to. Today, David is here with Maya, who is helping with the project developing. So please welcome David and Maya from Shifts from France.
Thank you. Wow. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for the invitation. It's an honor and a big pleasure and a huge learning experience already, and I'm nervous. Very short, Shifts is a group around me and Malvin. We've been traveling the world for about 15 years with our pieces until we decided to settle a bit in Le Havre. We still work between Berlin and Le Havre as two bases. I'm the German part. And since we wanted to settle, and since we've been invited in so many spaces and we got to know so many spaces throughout time, we felt it's time also to be on the inviting side and also to change to a more local way of working. And Le Havre felt like the place to do that. Le Havre is a concrete city. It's been destroyed in the Second World War and reconstructed by one architect and has a UNESCO label for that. And this is a rare brick fabric, old rum factory that we found, and we really took time to get it, and it's still not totally complete. But in the process of getting it, we got together with our concurrency. And so we met the people by accident that applied for the same space because they were looking for partners as well. And this was a local canteen that wants to offer food without waste and for affordable prices. And on top of that, they run a community kitchen with cooking courses, and they also combined together with a tea shop that also has a food truck for their project, and a bookshop. And so we center around the topic of nourishment, nutrition, for the mind, for the body, for the soul. And we want to transform this old drum factory that has been a music shop for 20 years, that closed down about 5 years ago, into a new space for our community and our dreams. So the space has this nice 110 square meters of openness towards the street, which is also very rare in Le Havre. And it is situated in an area just between the main station and the town hall, and just on the limit of the concrete, just where the concrete starts. Maybe we can go on. So the space offers 450 square meters ground floor, and it has a roof level, which is this one. And we want to construct a dance studio here with the possibility to show sometimes works in process or invite smaller productions, and also have artists in residency. And for us, dance is a wide term. We are dancing with lots of different disciplines and different movements. And a wish is to combine interdisciplinary research activity as well in these residencies between artists and scientists and activists. This is the view on the bottom towards the window, and you can see a little second floor in between. And you can see there are already some windows up there that allow the light from the roof to come in. We would like to cut a big terrace of light through the ground floor, so this will be more bright. And on the left side, there will be the kitchens installed. And on the front part, there will be a restaurantation area. And in between that open space from where the picture was taken and this restaurant area, there will be a little bar. And on the top, a bookshop with a small tea shop in there as well. This is a team. So here we have from the Dantine, Philippe Chenga, which runs the Chamionnette, which is a food truck, and he will also have a food delivery service. The bookshop is not present on this picture, but this is Malvin and Alix, who's helping us with our administration. We have collected around this team and around the process also other partners. I will come to this later. But right now, our main issue was that we have been negotiating with this owner for quite a while. And she's been quite jumpy. And even the two of us combined now make up her favorite projects, but she has troubles to decide. And when we were writing the application, we thought we'll have the space by December. And now we hope to have the space by the end of January. So to conclude, we came to the point that even when we have the space, we'll have to renovate for at least a year to make this happen. And so we were thinking, what do we do? And we were putting our forces together end of December, when it was clear that she will still take time, and we were looking out for other options. So the next thing is our intermediary option, which is karate dojo. It says on the door, it's the first club of France. We don't know what that means. We haven't asked, but it has it has a lot of square meters on the bottom, about 260 square meters in the back as a dojo, and it's basically those two buildings. And we found our intermediary spot here, like a 100 square meter dance studio that we can use from February. And that's the space from the inside. It's not much to do. We are basically operational from February to start our local activities, which also include works with young kids, kids' parents' workshops, and some culinary activities, because also me, I love to cook, and we will already start our actions together with them. They also found a restaurant 2 minutes walking distance. So we can collaborate in the future to during the renovation, keep the activity going. And the next picture is the dojo. So it's just to show you the size and the false ceiling, which also indicates that there's actually double space on top, which makes this space not as big as the other one, but an interesting alternative in case the other one doesn't work, because the owner thinks of selling it in 5 to 7 years. So this is plan B, to be more simple. And just in the next picture, we will see what just happened. And basically, this is our karate place. This is the newfound restaurant place, which already includes a kitchen. Wow, this is going to be shaky with my, I'm shivering. I'm shivering, and I have to, the little on top. I prefer my hand. So then an invisible beam. So we'll have a very easy communication, 2 minutes to this space and 6 minutes to our place of desire, which we hope again to have signatures on January, end of January. In the social fabric of this area, there is also a huge place which is called Espace Simon Veil. It's a social center with whom we want to collaborate. And it's a totally new building and very cold, and we have the feeling it's intimidating for the people to enter. And we kind of want to make a counter example of a space that is more breathable, more calm, and more bottom-up organized than this public offer. But there is maybe about the whole area, you can say it's the area with the most fast food places in Le Havre, because it's also a little a popular area, and therefore we're thinking of introducing a lot of activities around food and movement to the local community, and also have food deliveries to different working structures. And the funny thing is, by finding this new place, we also found new partners. So we are co-renting the dojo together with a mediation company that works on cultural mediation, Mediaction. They are also partner of the biggest cultural event of Le Havre called Un été au Havre, so they are very well networked. And as a potential renter for our music place, we are also collaborating with, or hope to collaborate with La Fève, which is an association that brings 300 students of the university to work for 1 year, visit a family in need with children, to bring those children into any type of cultural or social activity. So for us, the partnership is including all these local activities already to get more outreach and to get this center alive very quickly. That's all I right now can say. Maybe, of course, for the construction, we have a last thing. We have something that we collaborated with a collective of architects the last 3 years to do project in public space, and so we are good friends with a lot of people, local people working as landscape designers, architects in Le Havre, and the ones that are working with us on these projects are very interested in ecological building and circular economy. They also run one space in Le Havre which is called Hangar Zero, which you can check up in the web. It's a project around circular economy in the southwest of Le Havre. All right, I give the phone to Maya.
Thank you, David. So as you gathered, we are in a very early stage of our project development, but already the fact that we have been selected for this hackathon to listen to your amazing projects from different corners of Europe to stay at Moose is already very inspiring. We hope we could go further in our project development, and so we hope that this hackathon and maybe the next steps would help us to shape our renovation strategy. As you understand also, we are very much into a sustainability strategy as a dance, as an artistic company, and of course we want to transfer it to a renovation strategy. So of course all your examples and spaces will be inspiring for us. We are very much European in our DNA. David is German, we are French, and we also believe that having a bunch of European experts coming to Le Havre would be very inspiring for our network. So for some local authorities to maybe believe a bit more in our project, to support us, to fund us, everything. So we really hope there could be some synergies thanks to our participation here. Though we are very new, we are a newbie in terms of renovation. We are not an empty shell. We know what we want as a dance company. We want to have a working dance studio. So I guess it could also offer some very interesting renovation challenges. So we want like a dance floor, workable, but also we want it to be sustainable in terms of ecological materials, in terms of also collaboration, and also the fact that we will share a common space with other organizations with different needs. So hopefully, thanks to you, we'll be able to go to the next step. Sorry. And just for the little story, so my final question was, would you help us to push this door with us? And just for the story, we visited again the second place, the Todo place, on Tuesday. And so we only discussed with the landlord one time, and we were there to visit again with an architect, and we were very surprised and nicely surprised to see this tag on the door. We haven't signed yet any lease contract, but there is also already our name on the door. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David and Maya. Well, it's a good sign. It's a good sign. Okay. And now we come to our next project. Urbagora was created in 2008 with the objective of being a pluralist and progressive place for debate and urban issues, first in Liège and then little by little on a larger scale in Wallonia and Brussels. They want to promote an intense culture of public and civic debate on all urban issues. The city belongs to its inhabitants. Its future is their business. Please welcome Pavel from ufaFabrik, Belgium.
Hi, thank you for this lovely presentation, and thank you for having me here. We're going to switch a little bit of size, or a lot, but what I'm going to talk to you about is what we consider a timely opportunity we're faced with in Liège to actually influence and better the future of what is Europe's oldest major industrial complex. So this is our lovely city of Liège. You're welcome anytime. And before I talk to you about that, I'm going to talk a little bit with the team, about the team that's supporting this project. So ufaFabrik, as it's been presented, is this kind of weird idea where people came together to say, hey, we have something to say about the city. And because a lot of undemocratic and problematic projects were happening all over the city, and we started thinking together and proposing things and pushing for it. And so how we process things is usually we react to what is done or what is not done in the city. And at the first, we didn't really get much results. Like, we were not listened to, we were considered a bit like crazy people. And then suddenly we started getting more and more momentum, and we actually reached, so what we do is we intervene in some situations to change the path of projects, big urban projects. And so every time it's a bit different. We have a lot of connection and networks, but then on this particular case, we assembled like this working team of 6 people, so me included, and those 5 brilliant persons coming from all over and are tied up by the idea of defending and transforming Coqueril Sambre ensemble. So what is Coqueril Sambre? Is what my colleague Elsa Baldin called a territorial machine. So this is Liège. I don't. Is there like this thingy? Is it working? No, it's not. Oh, there. So this is the city of Liège is basically like developing around this. There's about 20 kilometers from point to point, and the industrial site I'm talking about is actually 300 hectares. Is separated in 4 sites, so those 2 and those 2. So this is quite a bit of space. It was created in 1832 as one of the first really big industrial complex. It was a steel production and molding industry. So what happened is it developed so much that here we started melting the steel, and here molding the steel because it was too small, actually. So the urban aspects of it kind of limited action. So they started setting up the molding area here. So how would that happen? Would you maybe you would ask, is through those which are called the torpedo wagon. Torpedo wagons which were used to cross those 20 kilometers full of melted steel going through the entire city, blasting heat through the entire thing. An innovation that's quite particular to Liège and is very kind of impressive for the time. We're talking early 20th century. And was I think they were losing maybe half degree on the entire trip. So why am I telling you this is to really explain this idea that this ensemble is a full machine together that influenced really much the development of the city and how it was built around. What is happening right now is, of course, the industrialization happened. Liège went bankrupt and lots of unemployment. So the place was abandoned ever since. So it's been decades. So this is just one part of it. This is 35 hectares. There's 4 sites this size. So this is the Eurecat site, which I will be talking about. And what happens is we have this very linear idea of which it comes from modernity, of course, and we need to consider what we do with it. It's a very big problem and has this very big stakes. It's also historically important in many ways. Of course, it's still heritage, like or industrial heritage. It was also mentioned by Victor Hugo as like a modern cathedral of sorts, comparing it to other cathedrals in Liège, and which makes it quite particular. So it's also social importance in the region. Of course, there's been thousands of people employed there and then fired suddenly, still living there, or their children or their children still living in the area, and seeing those places kind of decaying on place. It also has, of course, a lot of biological components to it and ecological components linked to the river and to the vegetation. It's an aesthetical, yes, it's an aesthetical, it's beautiful. And this is what's gonna happen to it. So this is the current master plan that's been decided by the city. So after decades of development of like nothing, suddenly they came up with a plan. They're saving 1% of the built environment and replacing everything else by this huge kind of mixed-use concept, mostly offices and housing, of course. So this is, to us, the problem, of course. I mean, there's plenty of problems, but the problems, of course, is that we have this idea. I mean, the problem of modernity and of those developments was where we're faced with the sustainability goals that we're talking about here, is that it's a linear process, right? And we've seen that even spatially. And this is just one more dot on the line. It's just like always the same story of using, throwing out, and this is gonna be problematic in 20, 50 years, we don't know. What we're defending is to bend this linear narrative or this linearity to make it circular, to use that image. And the idea is really to get over this plan. So, and one thing we want to say is, what I need to say is, why is it timely? It's timely because so the dismantlement plan is just starting now. So it's going to be a dismantlement plan of 4 years, probably more. And that's one element. Another element is that the current owner is enforcing this dismantlement, but is also selling the site at the moment. The region, the Wallonian region, might acquire it, but it's still not sure. So we're at this very ambiguous moment, which is to us a key moment to plan and to reopen discussions. And then there's a third aspect of it, is that citizen association just formed to defend this cultural heritage, but they lack means, both cultural and financial, to actually go through and talk with those stakeholders, given the size of the site. So what we want to do is, what I said, collectively challenge the status quo at the right moment, which is to us now. So the reflection stemmed from this book, which I have here. If anyone's interested, I have a few. This book that we published a few years ago on the future of steel heritage in Wallonia. And one idea that came up was, we need to use those sites, we could use those sites as big cultural hubs for cultural events, and that could be a drive to consider those spaces in time and to possibly renew and consider them and reattach people to those spaces that have been abandoned and that they couldn't reach for the last decades. Another timely opportunity is that one of the biggest hip-hop festival of Europe, Les Ardentes, is actually searching for a new site. It's a over 200,000 people spectators event every year that is linked to big urban development firms. And recently, the city of Liège actually provided them with 25 hectares of agricultural land for its relocation and to make a park in the middle of basically nowhere, which makes no sense in terms of urban planning. Yes. So what we're trying to do is to bring up that idea and to convince the stakeholders to reconsider the current plans and to integrate this idea in the process. How are we going to do that? So yeah. Oh, maybe one thing I need to say is this idea has been already proposed. It's slightly integrated in the current master plan. We've been listened to a little bit, but it's still completely impossible for actual big events that have an impact on the master plan to occur. So what we propose is to create new coalitions from existing actors, point out new interrogation, and test this hypothesis through the process I'm going to present. So how do we want to do that? We want to do that through a network of pre-existing but disconnected actors, local actors, through 4 days of meeting and occupation of the sites. So workshops with those actors. I'm talking local politicians, of course. I'm talking those citizen associations. I'm talking of the Institute for Oral and Working Class History, which is working with us. And I'm talking with the economical about the economical actors too. And every day would be centered over different perspectives. So first the left perspective and the kind of citizen perspective, one around the social and industrial heritage, another around the economic stakes, and another around strategic and political decisions. And this would be done with this assembly of actors to kind of reach transformation of the master plan and consider what can be done. Every day would be centered around 3 moments different. First one, which is about understanding those perspectives, those different perspectives. Another around living the site, because those events would occur on sites, and to kind of sensibly explore those sites, to get in connection with it. And a last one, the last moment around producing alternative from what we've learned through the day. Those 4 moments would be occur in connection with our friends at Arsenic, which is this Liège theater company that's occupying wastelands over the regions to try to culturally dynamize them. Dynamize? I'm not sure. And the end event would be a test of the site. So this is, of course, not Cockrill. This is I forgot the name, of course, Color of Ostrava in Czech Republic. Starting 2012, this big cultural event and musical event started occupying this site, which is quite inspiring occasions for our project. So that what we would want to do is to basically do a proof of concept on the site and to reach an understanding over this. So that would be not the end of the process, but to us, but the inaugural act of redesign, of our new design process. And so this would be a way to put the linear productive chain in a new perspective through a more dynamic and open process, which integrates more perspectives. This, where am I at? Yeah, and during this event, I'm talking about linearity, we're talking about also exploiting the river as using it to reconnect this history of the linear sites, because the rail yards are not usable anymore in that sense. But then we can use the river to reconsider this linearity and to go back to this festival, basically. So we have 3 main plans. First plan would be to occupy the site itself We don't have agreement with the owner right now, but we do have good contacts and trying to reach an understanding on how that could happen. If that doesn't fall back, we can use this space with agreements of the city, which we have good contacts with. And if that doesn't fall, falls through, we also have this last plan, which is the former abandoned kind of how mayor building, city hall. Thank you, city hall of Ugré, which is actually like overlooking this entire place, and which could be last way to reach this. Coming to the weaknesses, strengths, and what we want to learn from the RTL partners, I think one thing quite obvious is the scale of it. It is an enormous site, and we are a very, very tiny association. That is to us, of course, a weakness, but also it can be a strength in the way that it is high stakes, it's far beyond our reach, but we do believe that through specific local interventions, we can use that scale to create ripples through the entire process and to the entire system that presides to this abandonment and the renewal of those sites, because this is, Ugré will be the first attempt at renewing those 300 hectares, of course. And through putting together people that are not usually together, those economic actors, those cultural actors, those political actors, those administrations, we will create a new network, a new social network around this issue, and that could create precedents. Another weakness is the timing. Of course, it's quite hazardous. The property is changing. The project itself is in motion. The dismantlement is slowly starting. There's lots of uncertainty. But it's also, first, I need to say that through this, we do already have good relationships with most actors and positive first contacts concerning this project, and are going through with it. And we do think that it's also this uncertainty that makes it possible. If that's now that we need to act, because before that there was just no project, so no possibility to really act. And after that, we're just like going through with it. So this is exactly now that it's needed to act. Also on the Les Ardentes site, or the festival side, it is also now that we need to act, because this right now it's in 1 year for this festival to be on those agricultural lands. If it falls through, if it continues like this, it's just going to be permanent, which is a loss for the entire city. So in the end, what we want to learn from TEH and the partners would be first possibly to refine our strategy for the land use negotiations, and to learn how to reassure those stakeholders and on the feasibility and security of the project, because that's a concern. Second would be to access technical and legal experience in holding those cultural events in such context. We do have experience in holding those events, but not in such particular context. Now the research action workshops, I think, could greatly benefit the team. First, prior to the start of the communal sessions, as a way to prepare the occupations and to refine the possibility of access to the site, specify the conditions of those sessions, and the second action would take place afterwards, but prior to the kind of festival event, as a way to access a synthesis of what has been made, what we learned from those sessions, and how those can guide the conditions of this event. In return, we do believe that the RTL partners could learn or could benefit from this footing in the bettering of one of Europe's biggest and oldest wasteland redevelopment. And also, this is an eye into the process of citizens trying to intervene into those processes of major economical and urban stakes. So yeah, and just a bit far. Yeah, I'm gonna stop this. I'm at the end. So we do believe that with few means, and by putting the right person at the right moment around the table and on the side, it's possible to achieve those structural changes even in those very high stakes context. And so to wrap it up, I'm just showing you the state of the debate on this in Liège. So this is back to the torpedo wagons. They're decaying by the side of the tracks. Very recently, there's been a development on this. They've been realizing that maybe they have some interest. So the best they came up with was to make it a roundabout sculpture. So coming from this fascinating and terrible history of the torpedo wagons just rushing through the city, radiating heat, we're going to have this roundabout sculpture. And I do believe that it's a sign that we need to change the discourse and the imaginaries in Liège and maybe in general in Europe towards industrial heritage.
Well, thank you, Pavel. From Opagora. Thank you. Just put it down. Thank you. So, proceeding to the next project. Werkstwerket is a non-profit association of educators, landscape architects and designers. Their passion is to create better conditions for children to grow up in cities. Sustainable urban development, social cultivation, creating green play and learning environments and playful meeting places in the city are their thriving tasks. Play serious for a sustainable future. Please welcome Nicholas and Rebecca von Werkstwerket from Sweden.
Hey. Yeah, we're gonna change from really big scales to a very, very small scale. I'm gonna talk a bit about a project that we started, but that we couldn't put enough effort into it yet. But before I go into it in detail, I wanna present a bit about who we are. This is Werkstwerket. We are a collective of landscape architects, educators and designers, and organized as an association, and we work in the city of Malmö in Sweden. And as you already said so nicely, our big mission is basically make cities more child-friendly through different means. And so this is I have to talk a bit about the Malmö because it's quite a unique city for Sweden. Malmö is the third city in Sweden. It's the one with the youngest population, and it has about 50% people from non-Swedish backgrounds. In 2014-15, when this, when the situation in Syria and in the Middle East went bad, a lot of people moved to Malmö because it was the straight line coming from Europe up to Sweden, and they stayed there. So what we have now is a big problem of segregation in the city, as in the 60s and 70s, the Million Housing Program was built on the edges of Malmö, and this is basically where all the cheap housing was, and so all the people with a low income had to move to these sites, while the middle class Swedes could move to the centers of the city. So, and this is the neighborhood of Sofielund, where we have been active in the last 5 years, and it's one of the most interesting cities in Malmö. It's in the heart of it, while it has been before it has been on the edge. And is basically it's Malmö in a miniature. It's like a diverse population with lots of association, theaters, and cultural actors, but everything is very hidden. If you go to the neighborhood, you don't really see what's happening inside. And at the same time, we're facing a lot of challenges, as Sweden has one of the highest gun violence in Europe. There is a lot of problem with drug abuse, and especially among young people and youth. And to make the situation even worse, to give a context, we have now voted one of the most right-wing populist governments elected in September, so which makes the problems for cities like Malmö and from neighborhoods like Sofielund even worse. So we cannot solve all these issues, like we don't dare to. But we can do is like we can add little pieces in the city to make it a bit better, at least for the groups that are marginalized the most, which are the kids in Malmö, or generally. And we do this through different projects. We are landscape architects and educators, and we work with the combination of physical space and education. And so we create new opportunities for kids and young people and families, and of course all the others, to take parts in the physical change of their environment. We give them a spot where they can come and they can actually influence how the city is looking like. In this case, it's one of our biggest projects that is still running since 5 years, and is a classic example of an adventure playground, which is a very Nordic thing, but it's actually the last one in Sweden that we are currently hosting and that we're currently trying to keep alive. And it's, on one side, it's very playful, but at the other side, it has a really clear message that a kid can actually influence its physical environment directly. And that is a big thing, because that does not exist otherwise. And now we have actually, in Sweden, the Children's Rights Charter have been written into law 2 years ago, which has made suddenly this work much more important, because a lot of municipalities, government bodies, they don't know what to do with that. Like, how do you actually involve children more in the built environment and these aspects? We create meeting spaces with very multifunctional use. This is another project in the same neighborhood where Rebecca also has been involved, and where we try to create from an empty plot where an old Hells Angels house exploded in the 90s to this kind of neighborhood garden. And this, it looks very simple, and people from other cities in Europe, they might not raise an eyebrow or such a space because it's very common. But in the Swedish mentality and the Swedish government structure, to have bottom-up city development is something completely new. The Swedish political system and the way of how the cities are organized has been top-down all the time. Like, the city, if spaces like this exist, it's because the city has planned them and the city has implemented them. But there is less and less funding and less resource for that. So now there is the first niches popping up where actual civil society actors can come up and create these kind of opportunities. And it's still met with a huge resistance. For us to get this done, it was an act of, yeah, I mean, we still can't believe that we have it and it's not safe forever, but at least for now, we have done it, and it's a meeting space, but it's also learning space, because we try to stack these functions. So there is this grill, there is a scene on this space, there is a nature-based solution. We have like green walls, like rainwater collecting, and all this on a public space where people don't have to pay. So we try to combine all these three sustainability dimensions by making social spaces economically accessible for everybody and ecologically important for raising biodiversity in neighborhoods like Sofielund, which has actually the lowest green space per inhabitant of all the cities, or of most cities in Sweden. So this is another example. This is also very good. It's like a library where we started to develop the first green library in Sweden. So the library as a cultural space is so incredibly important, because it is the one space where everybody has access, and it's the most diverse user group. And so to have sustainability learning and experiences in a library allows it to be much more widespread than, for example, in a museum or like in a theater, where maybe only certain aspects and segments of society will access it. So this was just a case that we tried, and with a limited amount of time and a limited budget, we made actually a huge impact in the Swedish library world, which is a niche, of course, but it's just to show that this type of intervention is so novel in this country that we have done in 3 years. We have started with 4 people, now we're 10 people, and we have had a huge impact. We have been able to talk to the people from the European Bauhaus. And we're able to bring our case to the city. And now there is a change happening. Suddenly, like, this type of intervention has become much more important. The city of Malmö has changed city architects. And so there is a lot of factors coming together now that makes us relevant in Malmö and makes it important for us to continue our work. And so this is how we do it, because the designs might not be the nicest ones, they might not be the most fancy or beautiful, but for us it's a much less important than actual way of how we do it. And so we do it through classic like co-design workshops, but we also build it together with the people that we are building it for. So this while not maybe all the safety measures are in place for how it should be normally, has been a project together with like a leisure garden, you would call it if you translate it. It's like an after-school center in one of these vulnerable areas that is like the police of Sweden has decided that certain areas where there is lots of mostly immigrants and the low economic income, so that they're like vulnerable areas and they have a lot of problems, but there is also a lot of stigma around it. And so together with those kids, we have developed their outdoor space in last summer. And so this is just an example of how we work. So we do short interventions in quick time frames with low budget and a lot of enthusiasm, because we think that for kids to actually feel that they can decide and they have an influence on their outer environment, these time frames have to be short. For a kid to wait on a decision in 5 years that politicians can take about their environment is a time frame that is absolutely not non-compatible with them. And it also completely destroys their sense of democracy, because they, even if you co-design together with kids, as long as it's not implemented within a time frame they can actually grasp, it's a worthless endeavor, because the kids, they will not care about it in 5 years when there maybe has changed schools. And so I will come now to the project that we are applying for. This is a special case because it's the first time we decided to do something out of our own initiative. Like before, we have often done it together with the municipality or another organization, but this time we decided that we wanted to do it because we really want to keep this space alive. Right next to this garden that I showed you is this old garage. It's called Palmgatan. It's and it was used for different things. It has been a stowaway for a cultural center that went down. It has been like a studio collective, and then we had the chance to take it over. And it's the first time that we actually invest our own money to create our own space that we think is really necessary. And we're talking about 200 square meter outside that we're trying to change. First, the idea was to create a culture center, like a restaurant, a cafe, and a culture space. But with the finances as it is, like we skipped that idea for now. But we created a really nice collective workshop. So we invited artists and friends to rent out a spot, and there are currently stenographers and carpenters, and we are using it for our building projects and for whatever we have. We are 10 people, and this is like completely without any funding. So you can see everything is done by hand. We had a huge problem now with the energy crisis that the garage is horribly insulated, and so we had to put in our own time to do this. But what we actually want to do with it is this type of thing. This was a project we had this summer. We got a small grant from the Swedish Craft Association, and were able, together with an artist, to develop like a movable oven that we can give the neighborhood to go around, and we can use it for different events, and the neighbors can borrow it and they can do it. But what it stands for is a type of the intervention that we're planning with this type of, with this outdoor space. Because currently it's just an empty spot that we collect all our trashy materials that we try to recycle. But we want it to become like an urban learning center for the neighborhood and for Malmö, in the tradition of the Swedish folkbildning, which is popular adult education, where people teach each other without a proper teacher, and you don't have to be an expert. But we want to facilitate this on this space with the idea of like generating a learning center for like how a transformation of Malmö could look like if we do it bottom up. Because the city is very pioneering in many sustainability practices, but it's often high technology, high investments, and it's not very accessible to a lot of people. So we try to show that the opposite also can work and can maybe complement or even be better in the future. So what we are trying to do, I don't have any plans, because we're doing it in a co-design process with the neighborhood and with different associations and schools that are in the area. And the participatory process means that we don't know yet how it's exactly going to look like. But the idea is that we will know the functions, and the function is that we can have workshops there, that we can have food, because we have worked a lot with food in the past as like a cultural glue to get together the different ethnicities and groups of people in the city. And we want to create a space where we can hold this workshop and have like material labs. Because one thing that we started to realize more and more working with kids is that we want to move more towards vernacular architecture and natural materials. Because if these materials are safer, it's much more accessible for kids to work with them. So instead of working with cement, we use clay, or instead of like working with toxic materials, we try to work with materials that are not non-toxic, of course. And so and we do it in pedagogical ways, because that's how we work. We're not just going to build it ourselves. We're going to do it in these workshops where we invite people. We're going to have experimental labs for the people and for us, which basically means that the kids can come and experiment with the materials. And we want to do it together with the universities that we have really good connections. We want to try to create a summer school where we can actually implement how can we activate this space later on. Yes, and one important aspect is that last year we started a network with funding from Nordic Culture Point, with help from Trans-Europe Pulse actually, that is focused on participatory practice with young people. And it's a Baltic network, so it's like all these organizations are for Baltic countries, and they all work with kids, and they all work with architecture or architecture education. And the idea is that some of them, not all of them, but we move around, like we go to different spots. We're not fixed in one space. And this network we want to activate, and actually, while we have only been meeting online, we want to give it a physical anchor in this spot and be able to host them and to bring them there so they can help us to create a space together. And so I think this is a great combination of another project that we already have to make this space happen in a very interesting way. Yes, there were some pitch questions, and of course, like together with this network, the partners would be invaluable for us to like in ways like professionalization, as we're still a young organization. We are still like very over enthusiastic and not always perfectly organized, but also in terms of technological knowledge and of reflection of our practice. Because while we have done this and it has been received very, very positive, we are also very critical of ourselves. Like if you remember the first foil, like the team of ufaFabrik is like 10 white middle-class people in a neighborhood that is predominantly non-white. And so we have not 100% succeeded in including all the different cultural groups in our work. And I hope that the partners, maybe some of them with different cultural backgrounds, can actually help us, that we critically can reflect on their praxis and improve it. And so, yeah, and so we're applying for around 20,000 euros. It's for us, this is a huge a sum that we can make a really big impact with in this neighborhood, and also showcase to the city of Malmö and the city architect that this urban development in old buildings can actually be very, very supplemental and can be a very great addition for urban transformation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So, thank you, Nicholas and Rebecca, for ufaFabrik. So, we're coming up to not quite. Not quite is the mill. Oh, wait. It's the one who is just. Okay. Once again. Not quite is the mill at the heart of the village, which is meant literally and metaphorically. It has been a cultural center growing out of a mill town. It's a place for designers, craftsmen, a space for exhibitions, courses and workshops, and has become a popular tourist destination over the years. As their website states it, not quite is a little bit of New York in the middle of Sweden's periphery. Please welcome Malin and Carl from Not Quite Sweden.
And here you see where we are in Sweden, west coast, in the middle of the woods. Yep. Here we have the paper mill, and this will talk about also a Strands factory. That's our new place that we own. In the other one, we rent our spaces. Yeah. And this is an old paper mill, closed down in the 70s. And we have hired our spaces for artists' workshops and studios for over 20 years. And it's also a big, as you said, big tourist place in the summer. And we have exhibitions and coffee and a craft shop. Yeah, and we do a lot of projects, both as a big community, but also it's a place where members can do their projects through Not Quite. So we can help them, and they can use Not Quite as a platform for their dreams. This is one of those. It's a mobile slide truck, and I think it's mostly kids and youngsters, but also grown-ups who can do slide in wood and metal or other materials. And we go through the landscape and through the west in Sweden. And this is another project, a theater bus with 50 places inside and a scene for theater. And Kalle is very involved in this. And it was given to us or sold to us by €1 some years ago. Yeah. Yeah. And now it's the new place.
It's time for the future. Or so, as you heard, the paper factory was the heart of the village, or still is, and the whole village was built around it. And the factory itself, it came there because of the water, this resource, the water, and there was like a stream here going through the village, which became the major power source of first the metal factory and then a paper mill. So, and you know, almost all of the people in the village were employed there. So when it went bankrupt, it was a huge depression in the village, or huge. Let's say, how many people live here?
350.
So 350 people in the village. When 20 years ago there was 10 artists that moved in, found this place, and they started to create workshops to be able to practice their art in a affordable way, and also to have like the good life in the countryside. Now we are around 70 people that are members and co-owners of Not Quite, our association. Malin is the economist. Yep. I've been in many different projects, but right now I'm just a member. And we maybe 5 years ago we learned that the mill was going to be sold, because we've been renting it for 20 years, but with no written contracts. So every month we got an invoice that said spaces in the factory and a sum that we had agreed on. And the owner, she's a really nice, but getting a little bit old lady that might forget what we talked about, or might forget what we talked about sometimes. So, for example, the first group of Not Quiters prepared this space for exhibitions. It was like tons of trash and everything in here, and we had many years of exhibitions. And but one summer, the owner said, "By the way, I'm going to use the exhibition space now." So, without further ado, she just like moved in there, and we moved out somewhere else. On the other hand, having no contract has also meant that we've been able to. Oh, but it says spaces. Well, maybe this space is also the space we're renting. So it's like this kind of little bit fluent borders. Anyways, she was getting old, and and her son was unfortunately quite sick at that time, so they felt an urge that we need to sell it. So from the municipality, with which we have quite a lot of collaboration, we heard that they were offered to buy the factory. We hadn't heard about it, so we're like, oh, okay, factory is for sale. So we tried to tell her that we can buy it for €1, or well, maybe we proposed €1. She said no, and maybe it's for the better, because and she didn't consider us as capable of owning this place. So we started a huge process. This time it was huge. We got funded by the region of West Sweden because they see the impact that we have in this small community. So for 3 years, we've been developing different, ideas of a different structure to own this place. One big problem is the pollutions in the ground. So we've applied and got funding, 4 million crowns, I think, or to make a testing of phytoremediation, to use plants to remediate the soil. All this to like show the banks that, look, we can take care of the pollution, because once there's a shift in the ownership here, the next proprietor will have to sanitize the grounds. But the ones owning it right now, they have had it for such a long time, so the regulation doesn't apply to them. So, so we've been doing a lot of work of trying to show investors that it's actually a good deal, which meant actually now when the owner's son is well again, that I guess he's like, oh, it's not so bad, this place actually, after all. So now he decided he wants to keep it. So what did we do? In this process, we found another factory. The other factory in the village. It's 900 meters away. And this is the project that we want to, or that we're working on actually, and that we would like your support with. The factory once was the heart of the village, and after it was abandoned, the previous owner she worked like a little bit like a curator, deciding who could do what in the village. A little bit like the old times, the really old times, when the factory owner would pay the employees in milk and butter and bread, right? She would ask me sometimes, do you think we should have somebody selling antiques here? Whatever, anyone that inhabits this space is good, no? I'm not sure. And sometimes even if partners separated, and we went different ways, like of the members. Then one of the members wanted to rent an apartment from her. She would ask me, do you think I should, maybe they could stick together if we don't rent this? Okay. So anyways, she's been good to us, but she's been also a little, I know. So we were looking for, in these processes we've been looking for, who could be a nice owner of this factory? Would it be a Chinese investor? That has happened in other places in the area, or would it be like, could we create a foundation? What should we do about this? So somehow we have done a lot of this kind of searching for the perfect owner, and maybe now we have to become the perfect owner as we bought this place. So, and what was I going to? I was like the vision of Strands Snickerier, the furniture factory Strands, is to be a good place for art production, for artists to have studios and workspaces, and also to become a place that is a little bit what the factory was 50 years ago. It was the place where the villagers could get their money, of course, but also they would get the information, what happens in the village. They would, skim a little bit of the processes. For example, paper pulp was produced, so there was paper pulp everywhere. And now, when we go around in the houses helping each other renovate, we can find that there's paper pulp insulating the walls, for example. Or there is like, you also have a shovel with the FB mark on it. Oh, yeah. Who's this guy, FB? It's the Fengerfors Bruket. Okay. So somehow, the factory harvesting the natural resources, and then the people was like scheming of whatever benefits will come there. Maybe, or I hope that we can, in this new place, also be that place where the village can come together and also kind of reap some of the benefits of the place, as the old factory was more closed. Am I totally rambling, or no? It's still okay. All right. So, how many square meters?
1,300.
1,300 square meters in like 2 or 3 floors. Roofs have been remade now. We discovered that now when we are the owners, we can also access funding, which is a great thing. Spaces inside are quite raw, unheated. There are radiators, but the central heating is no more existent. There are these kind of semi-outdoor spaces, quite a few of them. There's also lots of good things upstairs. Lots of useful stuff has been left by previous. It was used as a storage place for the village for a long time. So Malin is now currently doing a project where she's going through all the things and making the museum of lost objects. So the project we're proposing is to make a little bit of a communal living room in this place, starting with a kitchen and a living, like a
living room.
Somehow, yes. Yep. Already the scouts are interested in coming because they need a place where they can cook and have what do you call them, hikes for the kids. And there is quite a few associations in the village working with culture or sports, and all of them have needs of repairing things or cooking for big parties and so on. So we're hoping now that we can do a kind of a work that wasn't done when the first Not Quiters started. Not quite, because they were more interested in producing art and showing it somewhere else. And we have, since these 20 years, many of us have had children that have grown up in the village and in the surroundings, and we've seen that so many young people, they are waiting for their time. That's like a quote of my son. We're talking about, in my time, in my days, my father was like, in my days we didn't. And my son, when is it going to be my days? And then when we're traveling around working with the youth, it's also like, okay, they're waiting for their 18th birthday so they can go. So we are like constantly showing, or with different classes or with the Sloyd truck, going out and kind of working with like these capabilities of trying to, we are showing that you could do something now here, and we really hope that Strand Snickerier could be this place that continues this process of reanimating this part of the countryside, because it's quite a challenging place for economics and culture. And we was reading up about gentrification before, because since we moved into the village, or since the house prices have been rising, there is now, you know what happens when there are artists and designers moving in to a place? What happens first? Yeah, but what's, huh? Sourdough bakery, yes. Like sourdough bakery, coffee roasting place, beer brewery, all these kinds of things. Bed and breakfasts, like now there's 3 bed and breakfasts. There's all these kinds of things pop up everywhere, and our open activities like exhibitions and so on now attract around 30,000 visitors every summer. So there's actually a lot of people. There's a big flow of people, but it's like many of the artists feel that they have now been like sensitized. They've been overexposed to tourists, so they want to have something more concentrated. And I think also many of the villagers, they have been kind of working around the economy around these visitors, but not really working with the development of the places. So we hope now to invite and integrate as many as possible in the future work of Not Quite. So is it time's up or? Yeah. And okay. So yeah, and I think I'm certain that we need to be many more to have a sustainable future here, because it's really obvious now that yeah, the more the merrier. So a few years ago, one of the artists started a neighborhood project. This is our neighbors actually from Strands, and yeah, this was, for example, some of the experiments we've been doing, like working with what we have around us, the countryside, the forest, and it's a French bonnet meeting a Swedish bonnet. Very important for us. And of course, yes. Last thing then, what can we do together? I'm a blacksmith from the beginning, and I was thinking about this when you're staring into the fire, blacksmithing, and you take whatever you want to work with out, you can't see anything because you've been staring at like what you're doing all the time. And somebody said that, but I think we need you also to help us with the blind spots, because we are so certain now that we need to do this. And in the board, we used to say that if we don't know what to do, we have to make sure that we ask somebody. But if we really know what to do, we really need to ask somebody, because probably there's lots of things we're missing. So yeah, and thank you for having us.
Well, thank you, Carl and Martin. I'm not quite. So, now that was our last pitching project in the second pitching group, and now we start over again by visiting some islands. Right, so another 40 minutes of engaging with the projects, discussing, giving feedback, and yeah, learn more about those exciting projects we had in the second round. So, and after that, we come together for a little short closure of this day. And so I hope you have another good round of island hopping. So see you later.
Yeah,